present some honor. Oh, you can do better than that. Let's give him glory today. Amen. Today we're starting a new series entitled Noodles and Eggos. That sounds kind of weird, but it's going to make some sense over the next few weeks as we are in our family month. You know, every May we try to spend some time dealing with certain aspects of the family, and so we're beginning this series today. So over the next few weeks I'm gonna be your referee, all right? Because one of the challenges we all have in whatever relationship we have, whether it's personal or professional, is that we don't realize men and women are different. And for many of us, we have a lot of tension, and it's pastoring. I've been seeing a lot of challenges that a lot of us go through, and a lot of that's just because we do not know how to navigate God's way and how to manage certain areas when it comes to relationships. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to deal with 4 topics: communication, forgiveness, agreement, and growth is what we're going to look at. And so also we're reinforcing it because on Tuesdays and Thursdays of the week following, we're going to have during our TNT more applicable and practical ways to kind of deal with it. So that's important, and I hope that you would embrace this moment of trying to navigate relationships, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's professional, wherever they are. And I think that God is honored in relationship. The first gift that God gave humanity was each other. Let me say that again. The first gift God gave to humanity was each other and how we manage one another. Matter of fact, I submitted that even the Epistle John said, how can you love God that you can't see and hate your brother and sister that you can say? How we manage our horizontal relationships are very important, and we want to grow in that. All right, so turn us to the book of Proverbs chapter 10. Proverbs chapter 10 will be our launching pad for this experience today, as we are sharing about this aspect of relationships. All right, this is the word of God found in the CSB, and this is what it says: the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Hatred stirs up conflicts, but love covers all offenses. Wisdom is found on the lips of the discerning, but a rod is for the back of the one who lacks sense. The wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of the fool hastens destruction. For time with desire today, I want to start this Noodles and Eggos series by simply titling this First Time Together. I want to talk about why can't we communicate? Why can't we communicate? Lift those hands toward heaven and say, Lord, speak. We need to hear. You may be seated in the presence of God. Why can't we communicate? Let me start with this one truth. Men and women are different. Let me try that one more time. Y'all still a little sleepy. Men and women are different. Different on a lot of different levels, from biologically, from psychologically, socially, in every way. And one of the challenges I think that happens is that we've allowed sin and this culture to make us think that because of our differences, that we have assumed that if things are easy, they mean they are good. If things are hard, that must mean that they are bad. I want you to suggest and submit for you today that perhaps for all of us, especially as we're endeavoring to grow in every area of relationships, especially when it comes to trying to do it God's way, is how do I navigate it? What am I trying to grow and learn? I believe Proverbs chapter 4 verse 7 gives us a very powerful principle to understand. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And in all you're getting, get understanding. This is powerful. And I really want to use as a launching pad for us as we think about that, because the truth of the matter, in our quest to be understood, here's my thing I want to push you with in this series. We need to try to figure out, are we understanding? We always want to be understood, but the question is raised, are we understanding? That great street prophet by the name of Rob Bass said it so poignantly: it takes two to make a thing go right. Some of y'all old school people know what I'm talking about, right? But here's the truth, and here's a takeaway principle I want you to understand as we endeavor through this process, as we're learning over the next few weeks about relationships and how we can do them God's way. I really want to push us. God made us different on purpose as a way of complementing us. However, we have allowed our differences to frustrate us. Here's the truth. My aim is not to make you be something you are not. At the end of the day, I believe God created each of us the way that we are. And in essence, the way God created us was to make us complementary to one another. But sometimes, because we get frustrated, because we get tired, because we do not take time to understand, we end up being frustrated, and frustration is going to ultimately end in an erosion of whatever relationships God has placed you in. A simple premise that I want to share with you today, and I know that it sounds odd. What is he talking about with noodles and Eggos? Well, I've taken a lot of my information from a book that was written some years ago by Bill and Pam Farrell. It was entitled, Women Are Like Spaghetti and Men Are Like Waffles. In essence, the context is that it suggests that women are like noodles. I have some ramen noodles here. I know some old school people. Y'all know something about some ramen noodles. This is all that we had eaten. And in essence, what it suggests to us is that it lets us know that noodles, my brothers and sisters, is like women. They did research and said women like noodles process things like a plate of noodles. That in other words, individual noodles touch other individual things of noodles. In other words, what he suggested in this book is that they talk about how with women, life or issues and thoughts are connected. Now, I know the danger in trying to teach on something like this is that everybody, I'm generalizing. I know some people say, well, that ain't how I think, Pastor. And you know, this is a generalization. So there are going to be a lot of generalizations. I know you can probably, I don't think all that. Listen, generalization to try to help us to understand from a psychological standpoint how they view it. In other words, what he suggests and what they suggest in that is that most women are used to connecting all the dots in their lives. Everything flows together from work, from home. They have an amazing way of multitasking. Women can manage more than men. That is how they were created. God made them like noodles. In other words, most women pursue connecting life together. But men, on the other hand, are like Eggos. I miss Eggos. Anybody ever like Eggos? And if you ever notice Eggos, if you look at Eggos, what makes Eggos or waffles unique is that it simply is just a collection of boxes that are separated by walls. So whereas women are noodles, everything's connecting, they suggest in their study that men are like these Eggos, that they have boxes, that men, unlike women who are connecting, men compartmentalize. They have certain boxes that they're in. They have a job box. They have a family box. And some brothers can help me out. There's a nothing box. That we can get caught up in the nothing box. And you look at us and you're like, what you thinking about? Nothing. And we are serious. That is, it's real for us. That nothing box is us. In other words, life is divided into boxes that have room for one issue. Here it is, and one issue alone. Most men live in one box at one time, in one box only. Matter of fact, it is suggested through their research that as men mature, they get better at navigating different boxes, but we always struggle jumping from box to box. Y'all ain't gonna help me here. Men are box oriented. We're problem solvers. We size up a problem, formulate the solution, implement it, then move on. Matter of fact, most men, it's suggested, literally organize their lives in boxes. And here's the trip. They will literally only sometimes want to navigate to boxes they feel successful in. So if there's a box in their life that they feel like a failure, most men will avoid that box. In other words, most men feel the best when they are solving problems. So on one hand, you have women like noodles connecting. Everything kind of navigates together. Everything kind of flows together. And men, on the other hand, compartmentalize. We operate in boxes. So you can imagine the tension. Someone who's connecting and someone who's compartmentalizing. The challenge happens there. It's almost like women are paragraphs and men are like bullet points. What's the solution? What's the answer? In other words, what I'm suggesting is that navigating this noodle and Eggos phenomenon and figuring out how to navigate it begins to speak about our differences. And here is a reality. God is not creating us to be something we're not. The question is, how do we navigate with those differences? If I know that is how women generally are or men generally are, regardless of the context. How then can we grow? And so, my brothers and sisters, on this first installment, I want to kind of look at that and navigate that from this perspective, and especially how do we navigate it in the area of communication. If we're suggesting women are like noodles, men are like Eggos, how then can these noodles and Eggos start to communicate? It is true, I travel a lot. I travel extensively, Deacon Prince, and I will admit to you that one of the challenges I have traveling is that whenever I get on the plane, my phone starts acting up. Anybody ever had that when you get on the plane? And always one of the things you notice is that before they take off, they always tell you, turn your cell phones off. I'm still trying to figure out, does this really affect the plane or not? One day I'm going to try it. Y'all, I'm serious. I'm going to try it and see if it really causes that much confusion. But because I want to make sure I don't get kicked off of no planes, I put my phone on airplane mode. Now, it's interesting if I had time, and that was the way I wanted to approach this. I would suggest to you that I do think that's significant, that if you look at it from an illustrative standpoint, that literally what they're telling you is that sometimes at certain levels, you can't talk to people beneath you. But I ain't got time to deal with that. So in order to operate effectively, watch this, they tell everyone put your phone on airplane mode. Now, when your phone is on airplane mode, you can't get messages. You can't get phone calls. Literally, your phone is functioning, but it's not communicating. And there's nothing worse. A lot of times when staff is picking me up, that sometimes in my haste to get off, because those are small planes, I sometimes forget to switch my phone off of airplane mode. So I'm navigating and trying to figure out, are they here to pick me up? I'm trying to figure out, are they here? I'm not getting no messages, only to realize the reason I can't be connected is because I was on airplane mode. I wonder, for many of us, how many times are we operating in life on airplane mode? We're functioning, but we're not communicating. And that becomes to be a challenge, because the real reality is communication is the foundation of every type of relationship. It is imperative. Somehow you and whoever you are communicating with or in a relationship with, whether it's personal or professional, if there is no communication, there is no relationship. However that begins to be birthed, no matter what happens. Therefore, communication is the critical junction. Married people would suggest that if you're not talking, if you're not communicating, it will not survive. If you are working with someone and you're not communicating, I will tell you 100% you will not be successful. Why? Because communication is the critical key that advances us when we are in partnerships. Matter of fact, the truth of the matter is, for most of us, we understand the good, the highs of communication, but sometimes if we're not careful, what God meant to be positive, we can kill with our negativity. That's why Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21 says a very sobering word: death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Literally, what that proverb is saying is that your tongue dictates whether something lives or something dies. And here is the sobering part, because most of us don't read the next portion of that verse. At the end of the day, here is the challenge for many of us. He says, you will eat the fruit for which your tongue produces. Which means if it produces death, you're going to eat death. That it always comes back. How many times have we spoken death over relationships? How many times have we spoken negativity over what we do? I'm going to conclude with that, but I think that's significant. Many times we're mad at a situation, but if we go back and turn back the hands of time, we'll realize we killed it a long time ago. People oftentimes confuse communication with just talking or making conversation, but I submit to you today that communication in relationships, no matter what station they are in, is about connecting, using verbal or nonverbal or physical or written skills. Communication comes in a multitude of ways. We live in an unusual culture where we rather text than talk. And so that begins to predicate, because I will admit to you the challenges with that is sometimes you can't tell intent through texting. I really got drawn to this, Deacon Robinson, when I was in Wake Forest. And one of the things that I did my major was sociology, I had this thing where I just really enjoyed learning about people. I just thought it was intriguing. Matter of fact, when I travel, I'm a people watcher. I'm in the airport and I'm just looking at people as they're walking through the airport. It's just intriguing. Just spent this week preaching in New York, and there's nothing like New York City. They had me staying downtown at Times Square, and I just wanted to walk outside. I just want to see people, and there is nothing like New York City. And so I'm sitting there navigating and watching these things, and it brings back to me, Deacon Brown, why I enjoyed it, because at the end of the day, sociology was all about human interaction. And there was a Harvard research done that began to talk about that even as children. It talked about they studied children and on a playground, little girls and little boys, and they noticed that most little girls, when they talked, you could audibly tell what they were saying. Hello, goodbye. They were audible in what they said. But it says that for the boys, only 60% of what they said was recognizable. The other 40% is that the little boys were just making sounds. Vroom. Toot toot. In other words, the girls were 100% recognizable in their communication, but the boys, only 6% of what they said made any sense. It's also been suggested that women speak on their worst day 25,000 words. A man on his best day around 10,000. That's a large gap. And we wonder why we struggle in communication. It was once said by George Bernard Shaw, and I like this, I hope you write this down: the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And it's nothing worse when you think you are communicating. You think you are conveying your thoughts, and you think you're taking through what you think is significant, only to realize the other person doesn't understand anything that you're saying. I'm going to give you 4 levels of interpersonal communication. This is just a simple introductory piece, and I'll get into my main lesson for today. Is that when you look at 4 levels of what we call interpersonal communication, there's certain things. Like number 1 would be small talk, straightforward stuff of life. That's what normally with people you don't really know well, but all of us can engage in small talk. You get on an elevator, but hey, how's your day going? The next level of interpersonal communication is thoughts and opinions. It's a higher level of connectivity, minor decisions based on preferences. What do you want to eat for lunch? Third level would be what we call opinions and convictions. This is where we share more spiritual and moral convictions are revealed to one another. What's your morality like? What's your spiritual walk like? And the last one would be emotional connection. Combination of what we think and what we feel. Hope that you come this week. We're going to try to give some strategies about how to better communicate, especially from a practical, applicable standpoint, because it has been said generally, most men start a conversation to solve a problem. No problem, no need to talk. Generally, most women start a conversation, guess what? To talk. Ain't got to be a problem. I just want to talk. And how we can navigate these differences between men and women produce purposeful and productive communication that is applicable in all relationships. I don't have time to go into all of them, but I want to give us 4 principles today. And I really want to challenge us through the Word of God. And I'm going to really stay heady here, okay? What I'm sharing with you, I think, is a biblical blueprint for navigating effective communication. Because all of us, in essence, want to be effective. I want us to be effective in how we communicate in our marriages, in our relationships, in our courtships, on our job, even in church. Because if the truth be told, a lot of times when there's a breakdown of communication, watch this, there will always be a breakdown of relationships. Are you ready? Let me give you the first principle, okay? The first principle of effective communication. Effective communication is built, watch this, on a foundation of trust. Effective communication is built on the foundation of trust. Here is the reality. People don't just hear with their ears, but they also hear with their hearts. That in essence, what I'm suggesting is that in order for true effective communication to take place, there must be a foundation of trust. Learning how to effectively communicate with someone will strengthen trust, honesty, and respect you have for one another in whatever relationship that it is in. The question is raised, how many times we allow the foundation of trust to erode before we address it? Because always, and no matter what relationship it's going to be in, there are going to be challenging and trying times. There will always be stuff that will sometimes make you question, can they be trusted or not? And how we navigate with that. I can't wait to deal with that next week when I talk about forgiveness and why we struggle in forgiving, even though we can be unforgiving, even though the Lord has been forgiving to us. And so now, how do we manage it? Matter of fact, how transparent are you in your communication? Can I trust you not just with my strengths, but also with my weaknesses? Because my weaknesses, in essence, in communication, and they begin to express who I really am. Trust is built because, we all have veneers and facades. We all wear the mask of hypocrisy, but true communication happens when I can take the mask off and I can tell you, this is me, and you accept me for who I am. Proverbs 11:9 talks about the significance of that. With his mouth, the ungodly destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge, the righteous are rescued. I love that because it suggests that the more you get to learn of someone else, the more you begin to understand someone else. Watch what it suggests to us. It helps us to grow. The righteous are saved based on our fact of knowledge. Here it is. Perhaps the challenge in true communication. Listen, perhaps you're not there to communicate with them because you're their counselor. Communication is not to manipulate you to be who I want you to be. It is learning how to navigate who you are just as you are. I wonder what would happen. Where would this world be without some level of trust? It was said in 1962, we were on the brink of World War III. President Kennedy, who was our chief commander at that time, was navigating a very tumultuous moment of what they call the Cuban Missile Crisis. President of the Soviet Union at that time, and there was a lot of bantering going back and forth, and they realized there was a lot of issues. So smart people of the government of today decided, you know what, we're going to create a hotline. They put a red phone on the President of the United States desk, and they put a red phone on the desk of the President of the Soviet Union. And they said, this is only used when you need to get in contact. In other words, don't worry about intermediaries, because in order for us to survive, we need to make sure that the line stays intact. Do you have a red phone? Is there trust in whatever relationship that you're in, whether it's marriage, whether it's courtship, on your job? Do you have a red line? Do you have some form of communication that you can rely on and declare it has to be trustworthy? The Bible talks about that. That oftentimes I submit that perhaps one of the areas of growth is when we learn how to trust through security. Now, I know that this turns out bad, but it's one of the best biblical illustrations of communication insecurity. It is the story of Samson and Delilah. And we oftentimes denigrate the reality, and we know how it ends, but I submit to you that if you look at it initially, even though her advances and her ultimate aim was evil, she created a level of trust and security with Samson that allowed him to talk to her. That I've always suggested it wasn't her legs, but her lap that attracted Samson, a place of security for communication to be managed. Effective communication has to be built on a foundation of trust. If there is no trust, there is no communication. Principle number 2, effective communication is not just what you say, but also what they hear. Let me say it again, because that's good. Some of y'all still asleep, and that's cool. Effective communication is not just what you say, but also what they hear. I can't tell you how many times after I've preached a sermon, no matter whether it's here or on the road, and someone, it is without a doubt, will come up to me and say, "Oh, Pastor, when you said this, it blessed my life." And I'm thinking in my mind, I didn't say that. I know I didn't say that. But that's what they heard. Here's the truth of the reality. Can I tell you something? That at the end of the day, everyone brings to every communication moment their own experiences. And they will hear what their experiences have positioned them to hear. And many times we get frustrated because we are only concerned about what we say instead about what they heard. Proverbs 25:11 says, "A word spoken at the right time is like golden apples in silver settings." In other words, that in order to navigate this, it takes discernment and it takes timing. But here's the reality. Proverbs 18:2 says this, and some of us park right here in our own lives. "A fool does not delight in understanding, but only wants to show off his opinions." In other words, if you are only interested in what you say and not what they hear, the Bible says you're acting like a fool. You're just trying to give your opinions and not be concerned about full understanding. Here's something to bless you, because it blesses me. And I don't know, from a personal standpoint, I had to put this in here. Can I give you something, especially when you're communicating? Let me help you. Tone matters. Let me say that one more time, because y'all still a little sleepy on this side. Tone matters. Okay, maybe I need to do it on this side. Tone matters. Maybe I need to hoop it. Tone matters. Because truth is, sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Y'all ain't gonna help the preacher now. Okay, can I be real? After a certain decibel level, I don't get what you're saying. You sound like Charlie Brown's teacher to me. After a certain level, it could be the greatest thing in the world, but once it reaches a certain pitch, y'all ain't gonna help me here. Maybe I'm the only one. Sometimes I feel like I'm the tone police, and I'll be like, "Listen, you need to watch your tone. You need to watch your tone, because tone matters." Even in written communication, don't send me no email in all caps. I think you yelling at me. I get defensive. That's our human nature. Soon as you come at us wrong, come on, let's be honest. Soon as you come at us wrong, I don't care what you got to say, we ain't receiving it. So it matters. And how many times, because we were more interested in what we had to say than what they had to hear, we end up killing the communication. J. Edgar Hoover ran the FBI back in the day. And when you study him, I will admit to you, he was something else. But they said he ran the FBI with a stern way. I mean, he was rough. And so everyone who worked under him really wanted to impress him. And it is said that one day one of the supply guys, the guys that was over the supplies of the office, pens, pencils, and paper, decided he wanted to try to impress Hoover. So he decided that I'm going to help save some money for us. So what he wanted to do was he wanted to change the margins of the paper. Puts it on his desk. Hoover comes in. Hoover looks at it and didn't like it. So he writes on the piece of paper, "Watch the borders." And this piece of paper navigated throughout the entire office. For at least 3 weeks after this, they said it was so difficult to get into the United States because they assumed that when he said, "Watch the borders," he was talking about the literal borders of the United States. He was literally talking about the borders of the paper. And how many times one simple assumption can wreck an entire meaning and intent of a conversation? One time, because you did not clarify, because it was misunderstood, because what you said is not what they heard. How many times have we struggled in that same way? Assumption's dangerous. If I had time, if y'all felt holy today, I would tell you what my communication teacher told me about what assuming means. So effective communication. It's not just what you say, but it's also what you hear. But how does that get manifested? Let me give you a third one. Effective communication involves being intentional in active listening. Some of us need to hear this one. James 1:9 says this, my dear brothers and sisters, understand this. Everybody, everyone, all of us should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Let me try that again, because that's the Bible, and y'all going to think I'm making this up. James says, all of us, none of us are exempt, should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. This context of listening is important because it requires what we call self-control and wisdom. Let me tell you how important God thinks listening is. He gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. In other words, according to the biology that God created us, we should do twice as much listening, hearing, than we do talking. Y'all ain't gonna help me here. Proverbs 18:13 says this, the one who gives an answer before he listens, this is foolishness and disgrace for him. As a kid growing up, I'll never forget, my grandma used to always get on me because she would literally always accuse me, rightfully so, that I was coming up with an answer before she even asked the question. I was so busy trying to talk and get my point across that I was not listening. A good communicator has 3 great skills. They are observant, they're sensitive, and they are skilled in the art of listening. Now here's the difference. There's a difference between hearing and listening. There's a major difference. Let me try it again. There's a major difference between hearing and listening. Number one, hearing is through the ears, but listening is through the mind. Number 2, listening requires full attention, whereas hearing only requires to be in earshot of the sound. Hearing is passive, bodily process. Listening is an active, mental process. Hearing does not require focus. Listening requires focus and care. Last one, hearing, physiological, listening, psychological. How many times have we heard but didn't listen? Matter of fact, I hear it all the time, even growing up. And you respond, you know how we say, huh? And they will respond, if you can, huh? How many of us, we're great hearers, but we're poor listeners? Because listening means engagement. Listening means that I've got to be focused. And I would admit to you, it is a challenge, especially with us ADD, OCD people, especially with the infusion of smartphones. Lord knows we can be more engaged in the phone and in our things than in actively listening. Here is the reality. Listening is not a gift. Guess what? Listening is a skill. And just like in every other area of life, you want to be better, you've got to work on the skill of listening. So how do we actively listen? Someone's talking and communicating, wherever it may be. How am I actively listening? Well, number 1, learn how to repeat key words or phrases. Did you just say? In other words, I'm actively engaged. I'm letting you know I heard you. I'm listening. So let me repeat to you what I heard. But not only repeat, I got to also learn how to rephrase. Because once I tell you what I thought you said, now let me put it in the vernacular that I received it. So I got to repeat. I got to rephrase. C, I got to regroup. All right, now, what does all this mean? Now that we've clarified what you said and I'm clarifying what I heard, what does this mean in the context of the conversation? And last thing is to reconnect. Because at the end of the day, I've always believed this, and it's true, is reconnect. Listen, even if there's a misunderstanding, even if we have to agree to disagree, we understand that we are still in this together. Can't wait till I deal with agreement, because I will submit that oftentimes, and I've stated this and it is true in every area of life, if it takes a disagreement to destroy the relationship, there was no relationship to begin with. Because every relationship is going to go through patches where you don't always agree. Matter of fact, it is almost foolish to think that you're going to have 100% universal agreement. You don't even agree with yourself all the time. So how do we expect others to agree with us as well? Here's the last principle. I'll let you go on this one. Effective communication means speaking words that express the love of Jesus Christ. That I must understand that just as when I started introductory, I'm going to end this way, that you got to understand the words you speak come to pass. Your words have the power to bring great blessings, because we learn through the word of God, the mouth of the good person is deep, life-giving well. But it also says the mouth of the wicked is a dark cave of abuse. I wonder, as we look back over life, how many times do we wish we just would have kept our mouths closed? Grandma said something to me growing up, and it made so much sense, not as a kid, but as I got older. If you ain't got nothing nice to say, just be quiet. But we so quick, we so hasty, not realizing. I know they told you as a kid that sticks and stones may break your bones and words will never hurt you. That's a lie. Because some of us are still scarred today because of some wayward word that was told to you some years ago. Some of us are still abused today because some word of someone you love and you care for, they came way at you sideways. And as much as you're trying, you're struggling because that word won't let you go. But here's the reality. It tells us that love covers all wrongs. Ephesians 4:15 tells us this. But speaking the truth in love, let us grow in every way into him who is the head of Christ. Jesus allows us to understand, and I always tell people I believe this is true. Matthew chapter 15, verse 11. Jesus was talking to his disciples. He said, it's not what goes in the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth that defiles. In other words, your words determine who you are. And whatever relationship, whatever position, whatever thing that you're in, be mindful of the words you say. The Bible reminds us the lips of the righteous nourish many. We cannot be righteous in isolation. That's why God gives us the gift of relationships. It's about bringing blessings to others. Who could you nourish, feed, encourage with your words today? Let's stand. The initial premise is we are different, right? So during the week, we'll kind of tackle more of those differences and how we view things. And once again, we are generalizing, so don't be offended. That ain't me all the way. Just play along, at least for the month. But with that differences, I do believe that God gave it to us to complement us and not to frustrate us. Can I give you a secret? You can't change anybody. Let me try that one more again. I know you wonderful. I know you grand, but you can't change. That's the Lord's job. I never get that. Those who know me know that story. Whenever I do relationships, I always bring it up. It was a long time ago. I was just getting back home for Thanksgiving with my family, and I was there with Grandma and Granddad. Granddad was still alive at the time. And Grandma was upset because one of us, probably me or Granddad, didn't fill the ice trays. and she got mad. Woo! Charlotte Swan got mad. She was saying every word ain't in the Bible to us. Y'all pray for us. She got so mad that she taped on the freezer refill ice trays. All she had to do was put water in it and it would have been filled. I mean, man, I'm talking about from the morning, afternoon, we had to go to my mama's house for Thanksgiving. My sister comes by, hopefully, grandma's so mad with her, she didn't even want to ride with her. She made my sister drive her to our mama's house. So me and Granddad stuck together. So we in the car. Before I pull out, I said, Granddad, you're going to have to help me. How did you do this for so long? Ice trays. He said, Charlie, I'll be real with you. It was rough in the beginning. And I got on my knees one day and I prayed. I told God, I need you to make Charlotte do this, make her do this, make her do this, make her do this, make her do this. But the last thing I prayed, I said, God, if you don't change her, change me. He said, Charlie, Charlotte's still the same. The Lord changed me, right? And it's easy in relationships to always blame the other person, but I do think a lot of times, if you work on you, let God deal with you, right? God, how can I be better as a communicator? And I'm definitely not approaching this as an expert. It's a struggle. It's an aim. And so it's always a progressive walk with us all together. But I believe that if we ask God, listen, help me be better in this. I want to be a better spouse, a better parent, better employee. Help me. And sometimes, here's the reality, most of us don't want to face the ugly truth about ourselves. It's easier to blame someone else than to say, you know what, no, I can take some blame for this because Lord knows I could have been more patient. I could have been a little more articulate. I could have been more active in the way I listen. And Lord knows I could have said some things in a better way. Even though you can't change the past, we can move forward from it and do what we have today. Listen, doors of the church is open. If there's one here today, I want you to come. If there's one that does not.